I overheard my fiancée secretly planning to marry me, take half my assets, and run back to her ex. So I played along, gathered proof, and exposed her entire scheme in front of our families on what should have been our wedding day. Today we have a crazy revenge story on why you do not spread rumors. We'll get into that in a bit. But first, my acts of rebellion against my obsessive mother. I was not close to my mom, and there's a very good reason why growing up was exhausting around her. And I had come to share why because it's been 3 years since she passed away today. I still miss her in a way, but I can't say I remember any fond memories of us together. It was the 1980s when parents chased dreams for their children. Whether those dreams fit or not for my mom, the dream was pageantry. She saw me, her only daughter, as a future beauty queen, a shining star who could bring fame to the family. Me, I saw itchy dresses, long hours under hot stage lights, and a life that wasn't mine. The pageants never seemed to end. Each one felt like another brick in a wall trapping me in her vision of perfection. I'd stand in front of mirrors as she adjusted my dresser. Scolded me for not holding my smile long enough. If you want to win, you have to be perfect. She'd say, her voice sharp like the pin. She jabbed into my costumes. The practice was endless. Dance routines, fake smiles, and talent acts. I didn't care about the worst part. Her criticism, no matter how hard I tried it, was never good enough. She'd say, "You didn't stand straight during the walk," or "Your voice sounded flat in the talent round." I couldn't tell if she wanted me to succeed or if she wanted to live live through me. Even back then, I started fighting back in small ways. I'd forget steps in the routine, or deliberately let my hair get messy before a show. These acts didn't stop her, but they gave me a sense of control, even if it was just for a moment. My mom was the kind of woman who never settled for second best. Her fierce determination could have been admirable if it hadn't been so suffocating to her. Pageants weren't just contests, they were life lessons. She believed they teach me discipline, grace, and how to grab success by the throat. Winning isn't everything. It's the only thing she'd say. It wasn't love. She gave me, it was pressure, dressed up as concern. If I failed, she acted disappointed not in me but for me. Or so she claimed. But I knew better. Her disappointment felt personal, like I had let her down in front of the world. As for me, I was caught in the middle. I wanted her to be proud of me, but I also wanted to be free. I wasn't made for this world of glitter and trophies. I was a teenager with dreams of my own dreams she never cared about. Our relationship was a tug of war. She pulled and I resisted, but her grip was tight and her expectations were like chains deep down. I knew something had to give, and one day it did. My schedule felt more like a boot camp than a teenager's life. School ended at 3, and by 4 I'd be shoved into the car heading to yet another rehearsal. There were dance routines to practice, interviews to rehearse, and dresses to try on until they fit perfectly. Her idea of perfect, not mine. Even weekends weren't safe. Competitions, fittings, and endless drills filled my days. Mom's voice was always there, hovering over me like a storm cloud. "You're not smiling enough. How do you expect the judges to notice you?" Or that spin was sloppy again. Her words cut deep. They weren't meant to encourage me. They were meant to mold me or shape me into her version of a winner. I remember one night when I finally snapped. I told her I didn't want to go to the next competition. "It's just one pageant," I said, my voice trembling. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Just one. Do you think the winners of Miss America skip just one defeated?" I got into the car the next day. Her words playing in my head like a broken record. I wasn't living my life, I was living hers. I wasn't brave enough to outright defy her, but I found a way to fight back. They were small things she'd dismiss as coincidences or accidents. Like the time I mixed laxatives into her coffee before an important rehearsal. She spent hours running to the bathroom, instead of yelling at me to stand straighter or smile wider. Then there was the talent show I didn't want to attend. I wrapped an old scarf around my ankle and limped into the living room. I twisted it on the stairs, I said, wincing for effect. She examined my injury with the precision of a detective, but eventually sighed and let me off the hook. I spent that evening curled up with a book, savoring my small victory. These moments gave me a fleeting sense of control, but they weren't enough to change anything. For every prank I pulled, she came back twice as determined. "You're better than this," she'd say. As if I was letting her down on purpose, my little rebellions were like splashing water at a wildfire, satisfying for a moment. But they didn't stop the flames. The breaking point came after a regional pageant where I didn't place in the top 3. Mom's face was red as we left the venue. Her grip on my arm tight enough to leave marks what happened out there. She hissed once we were in the car. I stayed silent, staring out the window. Do you even care? About winning, or are you just lazy? Her words stung, but it was the tone that broke me, the sheer disappointment, as if I had embarrassed her in front of the world. You know what, Mom? Maybe I don't care. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. She slammed on the brakes, turning to face me. Don't you dare talk to me like that, she said, her voice low and icy, after everything I've done for you that night. As I sat in front of the mirror, her words echoed in my head. I stared at the blonde hair she loved so much, the hair she always said made me look like a winner. I picked up a pair of scissors and held a strand between my fingers. If she wanted perfection, I'd take it away this time. It wouldn't be a prank. It would be a statement the night before the biggest pageant of my teenage years was unbearable. The entire house buzzed with tension, all of it coming from Mom. She fluttered around me, checking and rechecking my dress, adjusting my posture and fussing over my hair. This is the competition that could open doors for you, she kept saying. You have to give it everything. I nodded and muttered agreements, but inside I was screaming. It wasn't about doors for me. It was about her. Every compliment she gave sounded like an order. Every bit of advice felt like a command. You'll thank me when you're older, she added, as if reading my mind. As soon as she'd finally gone to bed, I sat in front of the mirror. My reflection stared back, pale and exhausted. My blonde hair, styled perfectly for the morning, shone in the dim light. It wasn't mine. It was hers. Every inch of me belonged to her plan, her dream, her obsession. I touched the scissors sitting on the desk. A wild thought crept into my head. What if I did something she couldn't fix? The idea was intoxicating, and for the first time I felt a sliver of control creeping back into my hands. With trembling hands, I picked up the scissors. The weight of them felt heavier than it should have, as if they knew what I was about to do. I grabbed a lock of my hair, feeling its smoothness between my fingers, and brought the blades up. The first snip echoed in the silence of my room. The strands fell to the floor, golden against the dark carpet. My heart pounded to my chest, a mix of fear and exhilaration. I kept going, cutting faster and messier with each strand. It wasn't neat or careful. It was chaotic, wild, and liberating with every piece that fell. I felt lighter. Her voice, her plans, her grip on me. It all seemed to weaken by the time I was done. My hair was uneven and short, sticking out in all directions. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. For the first time, she looked free. I sat back, catching my breath, and stared at the pile of blonde on the floor. It felt like I just shed years of her control. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for once I felt like I'd made a choice for myself. Morning came with the sound of her scream. "What did you do?" she shrieked, storming into my room. I turned to face her, unbothered, my uneven haircut on full display. Her fury was volcanic, her eyes wide, her hands shaking. "You ruined everything," she shouted, pacing the room. But for once her anger didn't scare me. I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread. This was the end of her perfect vision of me, and I knew it. Maybe I didn't want it. I said, my voice steady for the first time. She had no response, just stunned silence after the haircut incident. Our relationship became a silent battleground. Mom never outright admitted defeat, but her attempts to regain control were relentless. She'd make snide comments like, "If you had listened to me, maybe you'd actually achieve something," or "Don't worry. Some people just aren't meant to shine." Her words were daggers, subtle but sharp enough to leave a mark when her words didn't work. She weaponized silence. Days would pass without her speaking to me, except for curt instructions or sarcastic remarks. I learned to retreat into myself, building emotional walls to shield me from her constant barbs. I wasn't her little project anymore, and she hated it. I stopped sharing anything with her. My thoughts, my plans, my dreams. It wasn't worth the judgment. We lived in the same house, but we might as well have been strangers each day. I counted down to the moment I could leave. The day I left for college felt like escaping a prison. I packed my bags without fanfare, refusing to give her the satisfaction of an emotional goodbye. She hovered in the background, watching but saying nothing. Maybe she expected me to crack, to ask for a hug or reassurance. I didn't. I walked out the door without looking back, the weight of years spent under her thumb lifting with every step. But as freeing as it felt, a strange sadness lingered. I was finally free. But the scars of her control stayed with me on the bus ride to my new life. I stared out the window trying to feel excited. Instead, I felt hollow. She had taken so much from me, my childhood, my confidence, my sense of self. I promised myself I'd never go back, not until the day she was gone. For good that day, I'd finally closed the chapter for good after leaving home. I began piecing together a life that was truly mine. Without her constant pressure, I discovered passions I never had time to explore. Painting, hiking, and even learning to play the guitar for the first time. I could breathe without the weight of her expectations on my shoulders. But her influence lingered. I caught myself second-guessing every choice, hearing her voice in my head. Are you sure that's good enough? I regretted not standing up to her sooner. I had spent so much time trying to please her that I forgot how to please myself. It took years to silence that voice despite the pain she caused. I can't deny that her relentless drive taught me resilience. It took time, but I learned to channel that strength into building a life of my own, one where my choices mattered. Looking back, I wish things had been different. I wish she could have loved me for who I was, not who she wanted me to be, but I stopped living in her shadow. Her obsession didn't define me. I reclaimed my identity. Also, hi, my name is Brendan. And if you guys enjoy these Am I the Jerk videos, it would be awesome if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to our podcast that said our next story is Friend Steals My Boyfriend. So I publicly humiliate her. I used to have a best friend named Kara while growing up, and we were as close as sisters could ever be. We lived next door to each other, and it felt like our families were one big extended family from the time we could walk. We were always together, riding bikes, causing mischief in our little way. I could still remember a time when we put glue in my dad's shaving cream one year. Friendship also came with sharing secrets we didn't want grown-ups to know about, and we shared every secret we had. It was the kind of friendship where I thought nothing could come between us when we were around 15. Though things started to change, but I thought it was just part of growing up. We weren't kids anymore, and suddenly, boys became a big part of our world. I met Ian at the start of high school, and to me he was everything. Charming, funny, and so handsome, he was my first real boyfriend, and I thought he could be my forever. Kara cheered me on, or at least I thought she did. But looking back, I should have noticed the little things. Kara started acting differently. She wasn't as excited when I talked about Ethan, and sometimes I'd catch her giving him a look I couldn't quite place. At first I ignored it, thinking I was just being silly. I didn't want to believe that anything could ruin what we had. Then there were the moments that didn't add up, her odd excuses for being late, her sudden secrets. I brushed it off until I couldn't anymore. The cracks in our friendship were small at first, but they grew. What once felt unbreakable started to feel shaky. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I didn't know it then, but everything I believed in my friendship with Kara and my relationship with Ethan was about to come crashing down the first time I noticed something had to be going on. It was a Friday after school. Ethan and I were supposed to meet up, but he canceled last minute, saying he had to help his dad with something. It sounded reasonable at first, but his voice was shaky, like he was rushing to get me off the phone. That same evening, I saw Kara walking down the street toward the corner store, looking around nervously, like she didn't want anyone to notice her. I didn't think much of it then, but it all seemed suspicious. The little things started piling up after that. Ethan would avoid Ion when I asked about his plans, and Kara became more distant. She stopped coming over as much and seemed distracted whenever we talked once at a group hangout. I caught them sharing a glance that lingered a little too long. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. I didn't want to believe there could be something between them. Then one afternoon I went to Kara's house unannounced. Her mom let me in, saying she was in her room. Her door was slightly open when I got upstairs, and I could hear her on her phone. She was whispering, "I don't know how long I can keep this a secret. It's not like I planned for this to happen." My heart raced. What was she hiding later that week? I went back determined to find answers while she was in the shower. I looked through her bag and found a receipt for prenatal vitamins. My chest tightened as the truth hit me. Kara was pregnant. She hadn't told me, and I couldn't understand why. That night I replayed every interaction that we'd had in the past few months. and suddenly it all started to make sense. The final straw came 2 days later. Ethan had left his jacket at my house, and when I went to put it in his backpack at school, I found a note tucked in the side pocket. It wasn't signed, but I knew Kara's handwriting, like I knew my own. The note was simple. We need to get our facts straight, on an excuse to come up with when Elizabeth asks. They had to be doing something behind my back, so I confronted Ethan first. He stammered, denying everything at first, but eventually admitted they'd hooked up a few times. He claimed he didn't know about the pregnancy and swore it didn't mean anything. His excuses only fueled my anger. Kara, my best friend, and Ethan, the boy I loved, they both destroyed my trust that night as I lay awake in bed. Anger replaced my heartbreak. Kara had not only betrayed me, but she was walking around pretending like nothing had happened. She was selfish and deceitful, and I couldn't let her get away with it. The plan came to me slowly, piece by piece. I knew Kara loved detention, and she'd never turn down the chance to be in the spotlight. So I decided to confront her in front of our group of friends, but I wanted to do more than just humiliate her. I wanted her to feel the pain I was feeling. I waited until the next weekend, when we had a small gathering at a friend's house. We were at our friend Lily's house, a cozy gathering of about 10 people. Everyone was chatting, laughing, and drinking, and I played along like nothing was wrong. Kara was her usual self, chatting with people and acting like she hadn't done anything to destroy our friendship. It made my stomach churn when the moment came. I stood up and clinked my glass. "I want to make a toast," I said, flashing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The room quieted and everyone turned to me. Kara was sitting on the couch, her face lighting up, probably thinking I was about to say something sweet, to friendship and honesty. I began keeping my voice steady, and to those who know how to keep their hands and hearts to themselves. A few people chuckled. But Kara's smile faltered. Her eyes darted to mine, and I saw the panic rising in them. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice strained but trying to sound casual. "Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, my voice sharper now. "Why don't you tell everyone how you've been sneaking around with Ethan?" The room went dead silent. Kara's face turned pale as everyone's eyes turned to her. "That's not true," she blurted, shaking her head. "She's lying, am I? I shot that back because I found your little love note in his jacket, and let's not forget about the pregnancy you're hiding." Gas rippled through the room. Kara stammered, trying to deny it, and it was pretty hard to believe me since she wasn't showing any signs yet. That's when I handed her the glass of wine. "Here, drink up," I said sweetly, as though offering a peace treaty. She hesitated for a second, then grabbed it, probably hoping to appear calm and unbothered. I watched as she took a big sip, my heart pounding in my cheek chest. Ethan, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. "Why would you do something so dangerous just to prove a lie?" he asked, his voice filled with shock and disgust. Kara tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. "We're done," he said before storming out. It was over. She had lost him, and I had delivered my revenge. The aftermath of that night hit Kara hard, and I could see her life falling apart right before my eyes after Ethan left her at the party. She sat there in shock, tears streamed scamming down her face. She didn't even try to defend herself anymore. Someone eventually called her mom to pick her up, and she left without saying a word to anyone the next day. Rumors started spreading like wildfire. Our tight-knit community loved a juicy scandal, and Kara's betrayal became the talk of the town. Everyone knew she had been sneaking around with Ethan, and whispers about the pregnancy soon followed. Our mutual friends turned on her, calling her a liar. And worse, even the people who didn't know her well seemed to take pleasure in the gossip. Kara stopped showing up to school for a while after that. When she finally returned, she was a shadow of the confident, bubbly girl I used to know. Her head hung low, and she avoided everyone, especially me. Her once bright future now seemed dim and uncertain a few days after the public fallout. I received unexpected news Kara had miscarried. While I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone, I couldn't ignore the timing or circumstances and wonder if I had a play in it. I learned that after the public fallout, she spent the night drinking heavily, something completely out of character for her. She'd always claimed she could handle, but maybe the emotional turmoil paired with the alcohol was too much for her body to take. I'll never know for sure if one night of drinking caused the miscarriage, but I can't shake the feeling it played a role. It wasn't my intention to push her that far, but I also can't pretend I feel guilt. Kara made her choices, and life simply dealt her the consequences I felt. Triumphant at first, though she had betrayed me, and I made sure she paid for it. I told myself it was justice, an eye for an eye. Seeing her so broken gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. She had taken something precious from me, and now she had lost even more. But as the days turned into weeks, that sense of victory began to waver. I couldn't ignore the weight of what I had done. Yes, Kara had betrayed me, but was what I did any better? I had taken things too far, and deep down I knew it. The look of pure pain on her face when she realized Ethan had left her haunted me. The guilt came in waves. Small at first, but growing stronger as time went on. I began to wonder what kind of person I had become. Kara had hurt me, but I had betrayed her even though I told myself she deserved it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had gone too far. I had gotten my revenge, but at what cost? 20 years have passed since that night. But the memory feels as vivid as if it happened yesterday. My life has changed in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. I'm older, wiser, and far removed from the girl who once sought revenge. With such cold resolve, I've built a life I'm proud of. But every so often, the past creeps back into my thoughts. Kara and I haven't spoken since that night she moved away shortly after the incident, and whatever bond we once had dissolved into silence. I don't know where she is now or what her life looks like. But I sometimes wonder about her. Did she manage to rebuild her life after everything? Did she ever forgive me, even from afar? There's no denying that I feel remorse for what I did. Taking revenge on someone I once considered a sister is a weight I've carried all these years. But then I remember the betrayal, the lies, the deceit, and the pain she caused me at the time. It felt like the only way to make her understand the gravity of what she'd done. That event shaped the way I view trust and friendship. I learned that even the people closest to you can betray you in ways you'd never expect. It hardened me and made me more cautious about who I let into my life, but it also taught me that revenge, no matter how satisfying in the moment, leaves scars on everyone involved. If I ever get a chance to go back to the 90s, perhaps I'd make better choices, or maybe I won't. It's still a revenge story worth telling, and that's why I'm only sharing it today. Our next story is the rumor peddler. Spoiler alert. The only way to teach someone with an unhealthy compulsive disorder to tell tales that have absolutely nothing to do with them is to either make them the tale or let them tell a tale they would regret telling around it. Legit works like a charm, and if you're someone like me, I suggest you try out the latter suggestion. My name is Leon, 32-year-old male, and I worked in an advertising agency. Work was a place I kept my head down. I wasn't there to make waves or grab attention. I had enough of that from college. I just wanted to do my job and go home in peace. But I guess we cannot all be the same thing. My coworkers did not think like I did. They were a mix of personalities, but there was one constant: gossip. Little things could snowball into full-blown office drama faster than you could ever think. And that was Perry's territory. That was where she thrived. Perry, 26-year-old female, was one of the youngest members of the team. In fact, when I joined the agency, I met her on board. Perhaps it had something to do with her age, or maybe not. But from the get-go, I perceived her as the type who always had her ear to the ground looking for something to spread around the first day. I presumed I could make her out from her unsolicited advice on who to avoid, or those not to cross. It was like she was everywhere. Even after that day, she had this way of prying into your life, making even the smallest details sound like they were headline-worthy. Some people found it entertaining, but to me, it was exhausting. I avoided her whenever I could, to be fair. Some of the things she peddled around were funny when they did not have to do with the intricate parts of people's lives. I know they would have preferred to keep personal. Despite the occasional drama, the office wasn't all bad. Mira, for instance, was a good balance to Perry, friendly but not nosy. She kept to herself unless she had something kind or helpful to say. Then there was Miriam, one of the senior staff members. She had a commanding presence, the kind that made people sit up straighter when she entered the room. She was professional but intimidating. Definitely not someone I wanted to be involved with in any drama, that's for sure. And for the most part, I'd managed to stay out of trouble. I wasn't flashy, and I didn't give anyone a reason to talk about me. But in an office like ours, it didn't take much one small slip, and you'd find your name on everyone's lips. I'd seen it happen to others. but I never thought I'd end up the center of attention. That was before Perry decided to make me her latest source of entertainment. It started as an ordinary day at work, emails, deadlines, the usual grind. I had just settled into my desk when Perry strolled over casually, like she did not have her work piled on her desk, her eyes sparkling with that familiar look. It was the kind of look that said she had a question she wasn't supposed to ask, but would anyway. Then she stared Leon. She began leaning casually against the side. "Of my desk, I heard you left early last Friday. Hot day or something." Her tone was light, almost playful, but I knew better than to take it at face value. Perry wasn't asking out of genuine curiosity. She was fishing. I hesitated for a moment, my mind scrambling for a response. The truth was boring. I could have told her that I'd gone home early because I wasn't feeling well, but I didn't feel like explaining myself to her. And there was the possibility of her not believing me or thinking I was hiding something more serious than the casual case of tiredness, had some stuff to take care of, I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a glint of amusement flickering across her face. "Oh, stuff sounds mysterious." She teased, her words dripping with mock intrigue. I gave her a small, harmless shrug and turned back to my computer, hoping she'd take the hint and drop it instead. She let out a quiet laugh and added, "You're so secretive sometimes." Leon, before I could respond, she was already walking away, a sly smirk playing on her lips. I didn't think much of it at the time. Perry was always nosy, and I figured she'd lose interest soon enough. It was normal for something new to take her fancy within the office, but by lunchtime 2 different people had come to ask if I was okay, and I had begun to notice the sideway glances that other workers were stylishly giving me things boiled over, or at least I thought they did till the next day. The first sign that something was wrong came when Mara started acting different. Normally she'd greet me with a cheerful good morning, or a quick comment about the latest office drama, but that day she barely looked in my direction at first. I thought I was imagining things. Maybe she was just having a bad day, but as the hours passed, her avoidance became more obvious. She skipped the usual small talk during our coffee break and even took a longer route back to her desk. To avoid passing mine at some point, I thought she was probably pissed with something I had done and was finding it hard to approach me about it. But the whole thing was messing with my productivity, so I decided to be a grown-up about it and ask her point blank what the problem was by lunchtime. My curiosity got the better of me. I caught her in the hallway on her way to deliver a bunch of files to Miriam. "Hey, Marera, is everything okay? You've been quiet today." She froze for a moment, her eyes darting around like she was looking for an escape. "Oh, yeah, everything's fine," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched to be convincing. I raised an eyebrow, really, because it seems like you're avoiding me. She hesitated, then let out a small sigh. "Okay, look, I wasn't going to say anything, but people are talking about what I asked, though." I already had a sinking feeling in my stomach. She shifted uncomfortably, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Perry's been saying you were involved in some big drama outside of work. Something about why you left early last week. I didn't want to believe it, but, well, you know how things spread around here. Of course it was Perry. I should have known. Thanks for telling me," I said, my voice steady. Even though my anger was simmering, I did not know how to approach the issue with Perry, and I most especially did not want to feed the narrative that was spreading. So I let it be till closing hours of that day. By the next day, it was like the entire office had turned into a whispering club. Everywhere I went, I caught snippets of hushed conversations inside sideways glances. It was irritating having people think about things they should not even be curious about. Yeah, I could have decided then and there to shed light on the whole drama and explain the situation better. But who are they going to believe, the one who says it's nothing, or the story starter who gives them something interesting to talk about? What started as a vague story about why I left early last week had somehow evolved into a scandalous tale of epic proportions. According to the latest version, I was involved in some kind of secret office romance. Another version suggested I had been reprimanded for an incident outside of work. Each retelling was more ridiculous than the last, but that didn't seem to stop anyone from talking about it. The worst part came during a team meeting later that afternoon. Miriam, the senior staff member. She was someone I had a huge unrealistic respect for professionally. She was sharp, professional, and not the kind of person who engaged in petty office drama. So when she addressed the team, I thought I was safe until she brought up distractions while looking straight ahead at me. It went something along the lines of, "I'd like to remind everyone." She said, her tone measured, but pointed, that we have deadlines to meet. Let's try to keep our focus on work and leave personal matters outside the office. The room went dead silent except for a few stifled giggles. The ground could have opened up widely to swallow me, and I would have worshipped the floor for saving me from the embarrassing moment. But it did not. Whether she believed the rumors or not didn't matter. She knew about them. And now everybody on the team knew that she knew. But that was less embarrassing than the shoulder taps and rubs that IED from other team members when the meeting was over. They all wanted to say something stupid along the lines of, "Get over it," after the meeting. I couldn't bring myself to look anyone in the eye. The humiliation was suffocating. And I get that this would not have been a big deal if it was someone else, but it was me. I hated being the talk of the town. I preferred not to be the center of attention. Confronting Perry felt like the obvious choice. But I knew it wouldn't get me anywhere. She'd play innocent, maybe even twist it around to make me look paranoid, so I decided that it would be more effective to play her a similar tune. She made me dance too. If Perry thrived on gossip, then I'd give her something she couldn't resist. The trick was making it believable but harmless. I spent the evening thinking it through, carefully crafting my story. 2 days later, I was ready during what was supposed to be a quick coffee run. I caught her attention. "Hey, Perry," I said, lowering my voice just enough to let her hear me clearly. "You didn't hear this from me, but I overheard Miriam on a call yesterday. Apparently she's leaving something about a big offer from a rival firm." According to me, Miriam had not been overheard on a phone call making plans to leave the company. Not only that, but she was supposedly negotiating a high-profile role at a rival firm. It wasn't true, of course, but it was juicy enough to send Perry into overdrive. I assured her I was deadly serious, but I asked her to keep it on a down low, because issues like that could be sensitive for the company. But that was like telling a parrot not to be a parrot. It was impossible. I did not know how big she initially started the gist about Miriam, but when it came back to my ears, Miriam was apparently trying to poach members of the agency along with her to this Imogen rival company. That was all the confirmation I needed. Perry had done exactly what I'd expected. But the real surprise came later when HR sent out an email summoning her for a private meeting. It was not so much of a surprise seeing his workers became frantic, wondering what their fate would be if half the company went to the opposition. So I'd guess that some decided to take it up and ask legitimate questions from the bosses. It was a potential breach of some company policy. And she emerged from the meeting looking flustered and clutching a query notice. I could barely suppress my grin. The best part was that the trail of how the gist started ended with Perry. It never made it to me. I guess everyone expected that she would have worked alone as usual with that. Being said, that's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, drop a like and comment below. And if you want to check out our other videos, click the video on the right. With that being said, I'll see you all next time.